I'm gonna do it. Can they hear me?
Nobody on yet.
Okay. So you got live hot mics in it. So yeah, the StreamYard shit is lovely. What we was talking about as far as the rapid fire Q&A, I think that could be super dope.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's gonna be real live.
Oh yeah, StreamYard, y'all should do that. StreamYard. I like StreamYard. I've done a couple of them and I like
so
behind it.
now, and Jess was saying that when we run something off, if we run something from the office off StreamYard LBs, we can run the shit like on Jerry Lewis Telethon. You know, they run the shit across the bottom and like donate here and all that shit.
Mm-hmm.
So we can cook it up like that.
Yeah, so you can have conversations while it's going on too.
So that's gonna be. I'm gonna take a YouTube class on it just so I can see all of the shit it can do.
You do a lot, bro.
That's what I'm saying. So as far as that goes, that's bueno. God damn it, boy.
What?
Nah, this is a good one. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. It'll come to me. It'll come to me.
It always do.
Right. Oh. Figured out how you want to carry that first little virtual training, lead generation training we talked about?
Yeah, man, that's what we're supposed to be doing today.
That's what I'm saying. You get
We're
that
supposed
stuff?
to be going through the YouTube and looking through the content.
Of what you already put out.
Yeah, we're supposed to be doing that together.
Okay, well, pull up the BDRBF YouTube page. Yeah, I can check it out. Because all we got to do is go to the one on your lead generation. Mm-hmm. And then I'll look at that episode and then I'll make some notes.
It's a couple of them.
And then I'll see how we can tweak it.
I can tell y'all the ones. Well, you know what? It actually will be easier
if you tell me what episode it is.
If we go inside Serum.
I mean, that's our in-house shit.
Yeah, so I'm going to show you, but it's linked.
I was like, share drive? Out of Serum.
Oh, for that stuff.
And I gave you the printout, man, because you're going to be asking me about it in the future, and I'm going to have to go to the printout in order to find it. Printout ain't going to exist.
I'm going to get you.
Yeah, because I'm going to make some notes over the first lead generation training you did. And I'm going to pull out the best parts to see about sites.
Okay.
And then, if we do that, man, we got to start tracking this shit.
No need to reinvent the wheel.
Nah, because I'm going to start doing some more Atlanta shit too.
What you mean?
Oh, no. Like I told you, y'all, I've been filling up for a Georgia license. I'm going to get a Georgia license.
Yeah? You got connects down there?
How does that work? How the Georgia license thing gonna work? Are they reciprocal down or you gotta start from the bottom?
No, I mean, shit, I gotta take the fucking class.
You gotta take the class too?
Well, shit,
you don't have to take the national again, though. You just gotta take the state.
But shit, hell yeah, I'm gonna take a class. Just so I can.
You just gotta take the state?
Yeah. Shit, dude, that shit costs some bread now.
State's always the easiest one.
That's not bad. Well, you know, in
but
certain states,
every state a little different.
But you know, in certain states, you ain't even gotta take no test. And you can get your license. Yeah, as long as you pass the national. As long as you pass the national.
You need to make a list of them states.
or something. No, I'm serious. And or there's certain ones that they carry.
Really the only place you want to be because you got relationships there.
Right, that's all.
Right.
Like if I ever had to get another license, I would do Atlanta,
LA,
and then potentially LA because I know some people down there, but I know more people in Atlanta.
Right, that's what I'm saying. That's the only front of it.
Yeah, you want to, or even Louisiana. Like you think about it, but Louisiana's got such a poverty rate, they can't buy no house.
So yeah, I'm looking at somebody
like
my people want me to get a Georgia license, so.
Saving down there making moves. Okay, that's not bad.
Then, you know, young Q ready to make some extra plays. Q ain't never coming back.
Is Q still down there now?
Not Q, Quasar.
Oh, Quasar, yeah.
He ain't never coming back. Don't even worry about it. He's old Lady Rich too. That's another reason I'm getting it. That boy's back to stone cold surgeon.
Yeah. All right, so you had this login you been in before?
Yes, I've been in there before.
All right, so this one, all of the Legion stuff is in here. So it's
advice to new agent.
Not that one, not that one.
Which one
right
right
here?
Look at.
Skill set number 1.
Generate leads, and more leads.
That's what I was telling you, like. She need to check. She don't do none of that. I asked her, man. She don't do none of that. So I need a check made out to her so I can mail it. But Rick D.
Yes, sir.
So remember I was telling you, like I have them already broke down.
Yeah, skill set 1,
Like,
skill set 2.
so you got leads, this follow up, so we could do them as separate. Like this is generating the leads. This is like following up with the leads. And you want to include that one this week? Next week. This week. You want to include that one this week?
Oh no, this one, no,
Yeah.
next week.
Oh, okay.
Next week, no.
That's me. All right. So and then like scheduling the consultation, and then these right here they broke down between buyers and sellers, and just like this.
No, we're gonna start at the top and work our way down.
Yeah. See, so we ain't gotta reinvent it. So generate leads. We go here, and then each one of these is a video of me talking about lead generation.
No.
All of these are lead
And they
generation
say watch on
videos.
YouTube.
So all of these is YouTube. So it's like 10 videos. Hey, look, we was able to squeeze it in though.
Oh, no, this makes sense. We'll do it just like this.
Well, I mean,
Make sure I can log into mine. So we'll say serum. I said, what you need, a share drive? I say, my man say serum. I say, whoa. Serum. I say, yeah, I know we got a share drive here. I said, you can name that shit Jarvis.
They got a name, bro. They got a name, Serum.
That's what
Hey,
you do.
Jess. Yeah. I mean, honestly, in my gut, I feel like ain't nobody gonna jump on because contracts just ain't sexy.
Okay, 7 agent. I'm going into the 7 agent train.
No, that's not the right one.
Is not the right one?
Who's Monique? Oh, Monica Clark. Ain't no agent shit.
Yeah, no, it's gotta be.
No, you gotta go to this
7
BDREFthinkIfic.com. Does Rick D have an account?
I'm saying I've been always going through this. Well, the original 7 agent training.
Yeah, well, that's
That's
outdated,
outdated.
man.
Okay, can't fuck with my share drive. Look, I got y'all boys loaded up on my job with everything else. All the shows, all the podcast shows,
And look,
all the
Jess,
outtakes.
and look, Jess stopped giving it out. I was like, Jess, you still got the 7
Your man
drive?
roasted me because I still got the 7 agent on my train. He gonna roast me. He gonna roast me for being old school.
Hey, look, but Jess
Oh,
got on me about it. Look, she gave me, and look, Jess.
my boys are happy into the shit.
Yeah, look,
Oh,
Jess,
shit.
Jess gave me that look, and I was like, I feel bad about myself being Manson about it. Like,
Yeah, like, oh god, okay, okay, what's the new shit? I need the new shit.
But
You need
just
an
so all
account.
agents, even the 100%.
no, he need one. Yeah, cause we work on this thing together.
Man, that boy that say the 7 agent trainers on. I'm thinking I got some shit. I say, look, I got a folder.
Oh,
Hey,
cool,
look, boy, I
baby.
got it on the share drive. Dog. We straight.
We evolved, bro.
Hey, look, I'm like, we straight. I got podcast episodes next to the 7 agent training,
We evolved.
next to all little templates.
See about
You know some shit that is highly effective that I don't know if every agent we got uses
What's that?
is the Brooks and Davis template offer letter sheets. I do that shit a lot, especially when somebody offering less than list price.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of that shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah. What's up, Cecilia? You muted.
Hi, good afternoon.
There she is.
How are you?
I'm phenomenal. How about yourself?
Doing great.
So you ready? You want to learn about some contracts?
Yes, sir. That's why I'm here.
You probably just gonna go through it. Like it ain't really no glitz or glamour with this training. This one of those trainings we just gonna kind of go through it. I'm gonna highlight some areas that we need to kind of pay attention to.
Mhm.
And submit them, but we do these once a quarter. Just kind of make sure that we up to speed on some of the forms that you're gonna be using.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, so we'll get started here in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Can you hear my music?
Yes.
Okay, just making sure. So you,
Hey, I have a quick question. What time is the study hall tomorrow? At the same time as this, like after this?
So what I just realized is that we're not doing study hall. Hey, Jess, make sure you send something out. Send something out to the affiliates that we're not doing study hall this week. It'll be next week. So our scheduling got thrown off because there were 5 Thursdays in May. We do it every other Thursday, but realistically, I think we're doing it the second and or either.
Okay, so what's tomorrow? So on the 10th?
It's on the 10th, yeah.
Okay, and then for the Builders Expo, we have to sign up for that, right?
Go to the website, man. If it's a cost, then matter of fact, I'm glad you asked about that. I'm gonna have Margaret reach out to our point of contact and see how many people we can kind of come in with us.
Okay, because I know we had talked about it, so I just want to make sure because I had a family emergency, so I think I'm gonna be flying back to Chicago for a few days. So I just wanted to make sure that I'm here because I would like to go. So I just wanted to figure that out.
Make sure everything is up and up. Yeah. So Margaret's gonna be reaching out to him today, and I get a definite answer for you on that.
Okay, cool. And then I should be taking my test soon, so get this ball moving.
Let's go. Let's get it going. Let's go. Let's go. All right. Let me shade down so you can see my face.
Yes.
See my face.
See your face.
Face. What's up, Monica?
Hello.
We're gonna go through some contracts today.
I'm excited.
All right, so now you're up to speed, Rick. All right, ladies, give me 1 second. I'll be right back.
You had anyone there? Yeah. I ain't shut this place off. You know. How long you had him in there? Oh, he kicked it off there? Oh. I can't see him in there. So told me to stop for you. I was gonna stop and see my view today. Oh, you took pictures of him? Yeah. Shit, what's this?
So I had got a little Polaroid, they got those cameras that.
You got it with you?
No, I don't have it with me. I had to
So it prints out on the spot.
Shit, Fuji Mini. They got the.
Put you on that. You just be on shower. You like, I'm gonna get that shit. And they keep that thing out right here.
Like the old, they got the old Polaroid.
Word. Rich. This is called Fuji Mini Joint. Oh, yeah. Come on, Joe. You gotta stop it. JP. Oh. Yo. Okay, let me murder.
Hey, this one ain't gonna go live.
Huh?
I said this one, I'm not.
Okay. You need me to turn the light on for you?
Yeah.
Stuff? What's May, Gonzalez,
Cecilia and Monica.
hey Monica, what's going on, everybody?
Oh, we got Cedric, Jamie.
Hey.
We got some
Jamie,
people.
don't forget about your cards. They sit waiting for you.
Yeah, your car's here, Jamie.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. All right, we ready to jump on. So what we're gonna do is just kind of utilize this as an opportunity to get familiar with definitely the 1 to 4 family. We may jump into the third party financing addendum as well, and the HOA, because that's the form that people are really kind of using these days. We'll do this once a quarter just so everybody can stay up to speed on all that stuff. I always like to start off with where you guys can find the forms. So is everybody familiar, especially Sid and Jamie? Y'all familiar with Zip Forms? Zip Forms online is the one that I utilize. Now there are some agents that use Transaction Desk, and there are some agents that use Dotloop. All of those can be found through your membership of HCR. All of those can be found, but I'm going to go ahead and since I'm already set up, matter of fact, let me log in the HA.
So Michael, I do have a question for you.
All right, what you got, Sid?
So I've only used Zip Forms too over the years, but I'm always unable to get it on my phone. Have you ever used it? I've tried to download the Zip Form mobile, and it wasn't any good when I tried it.
Yeah.
Have you ever used it on your phone?
So you know what, man? I'm so outdated as it relates to offers, man. I don't even know the last time I submitted an offer.
Oh, okay. And it's not to submit a full offer. It's just if I had to go in and make an adjustment or add an addendum, and I'm on the move, I would want to do it quickly, but I would always have to find somewhere with Wi-Fi to get my laptop going.
Get your laptop.
And do that.
Do you have a tablet?
I was using a tablet for a while. My tablet, I had the older iPad. I need to update. So I'm not using a tablet right now, but I'm probably going to go ahead and do that just so I have that. I know that it does work on the tablet.
Yeah, and I think as we talk through it, my recollection as it related to that Zip Forms app was it didn't do well on the phone.
Yeah, I didn't think so. Just wanted to make sure. Okay.
No worries. What'd you say, Jess? In the phone? All right, so Jess is saying when you have it on your phone, make sure that it's not in mobile, it's in desktop view. And then you may be able to get some of those capabilities that you're looking to get.
Okay, I appreciate that.
So that's something to try out. Okay, all right, so Sid, you use Zip Forms as well.
Correct.
Now I know they said like if we click on tools, let me see. Hey Jess, what do you use as far as your contracts? You use Zip Forms? Do you know anybody that uses Transaction Desk or Dotloop? Because I know both of them, you can access them through here. Well, let me try form. That's the form trying. I'm just trying to. All right, so inside of your HAR, under Tools, MLS Tools, you can do Forms Manager. Now these don't allow you to automatically type into them, but you can find all the forms in there. Third-party tools. There it is. So under third-party tools, you have Transaction Desk or Dotloop, and both of these are already a part of Matter of fact, to be honest with you, I think Transaction Desk is a lot more user-friendly than Zip Forms. I just haven't taken the time to go learn it. But when I had to help one of our agents with it, it's a smoother flow from start to finish, and it allows the signing aspect in it as well, and it automatically uploads the documents, and you can add additional documents. So if I had to encourage anybody to utilize it, I would encourage them to use Transaction Desk because it also has that component of CMA. I think you can add your contacts in there as well. Yeah, so you can actually create your transaction. Oh, there should not be music playing. Thank you, Sid. I never turned the music off. Boom. All right. Music off. All right, thanks, Sid. I don't know why I couldn't hear the music. Oh, there go Dave. What's up, Mr. Hawkins? jumped on the train. And
What's going on, Mr. Davis? How you doing?
It's all good, brother. It is all good. All good. So I'm just kind of going through the HAR. And for those that are agents, so like Dave, have you already signed up with HAR? Because everything that we're looking at, you got to be a member
Yes.
to access all this stuff. All right. So I signed into my HAR. I went to third-party tools. Now for us old agents like myself and some of the ones here in the office, we use zip forms because they didn't have transaction desk or dot loop or any of that stuff when we first got into real estate. So, and then we just haven't taken the time to learn these new tricks. But when I had to work with one of our agents and we were inside a transaction desk, that would be my recommendation as far as transaction desks, as far as doing your contracts and your forms. So, but you do also have, some people are familiar with dot loop. And then that is another transaction system that you can utilize as it relates to document management and e-signatures and storage and things like that. So those are all of our options as it relates to that, what you can as far as to access the forms. So either through transaction desk, dot loop, or just through your basic forms manager inside of HAR, you can access the forms as well, which is the screen that I'm on right now. All right. Does anybody got any questions about that?
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Could you use like correct? Because they have all their forms on there too, and they're updated. So as they change, like they'll be updated on here. Couldn't we go through them too, or would you want us to be strictly with these?
So you're talking about Trek's website?
Yeah.
So
I'm on them right now. Like they have the 1 to 4 family residential contract. They have all the contracts. And then when I was in school, they told us to go through them too, because if they're all going to be updated, so you'll never have to like change it. They're all going to be on there.
So here we go. So here's the thing about the Trek contracts, and you guys know this. Only certain forms, right? They don't have they have the amendments and they have the contracts. They have. I think you can find like if you're looking for a listing agreement, maybe let me see other forms.
They should have them on there.
So these are the only forms that are associated with the contract itself. So like, notice how your IEBS form is not even on here.
Okay.
That's not a Trek form. The only forms that are on the Trek website are the Trek forms.
Okay.
So include your contracts. That's going to include your addendums to the contracts. And I agree, yeah, they are going to be the most recent, the most updated. But the key is that whenever they change these forms, these other services like zip forms, HAR, like they're pretty good at updating their forms immediately when the new forms come out. So,
okay.
You know, I understand what they're telling you guys in school. From a practical standpoint, though, there really isn't a lag in the new forms being added to the libraries of these other third-party sites.
Okay. I just wanted to know. Thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, I think that was a great question. Matter of fact, I never really considered that, but she's right. You know, they do have the forms out on the Trek website, which is, it's amazing that they have these. Oh, also, like they don't have yeah, they got the residential, no. So yeah, only the Trek forms are out here, but they don't have like a lease addendum. That's not out here. I don't understand why Trex puts these forms out here for the consumer. Cause like, if I'm talking to a sell by owner and I'm like, hey, you know, what contract you gonna use? He can go to the Trek website and just pull this contract and try to use it. He ain't gonna know how to fill it out, but it's on there. All right, so those are the ways that we can go and look at it. All right, but now as we go through the 1 to 4 family, let's see, I guess we can just kind of go here. We can look at this one. All right, so, you know, they did just recently update the 1 to 4 family contract November of last year. They did not make it mandatory for us to use this updated contract until April of this year. So now you got to make sure that whatever 1 to 4 family contract that you're using, that it has this November 10th, 2020 date on the top of it. Like that's how you're going to know that you're using the right contract. All right. Now, you know, there were a lot of things that stayed the same. You know, if you look at section number 1 as it deals with the parties, so that's where you put your buyer and your seller name here at the top. And then you put the information about the property. So you all know where to go and get the legal descriptions and all this information, lot, block, all of that. Do y'all know where to go to get that information? There is a couple of places that you can go. One of them is on the MLS. Like if you're filling out a contract, you definitely want to have the MLS write up for the property in front of you. So that information is going to be on the MLS write up. But it's also, you can also go to whatever the tax district is. So if it's whether based on the county, so if it's in Harris County, if it's in Fort Bend County, you can go there. Now inside of, if we go inside of Matrix, if we go inside of Matrix, there's Matrix. Hold on, yeah. There we go. All right, so if we go inside of Matrix and say we just pull up a random property for sale. So let's just go single family. Let's go here. All right, so we're gonna pull up this property here, this house. No, I don't like that one. Let's go to another one, Lake Jackson. Give me something in Houston. There we go. All right. All right, so now that legal description that I'm talking about, let's see. Got too many tabs open. Let's see, where did I open it in? Well, we could just do this one. Let me open this one up. There we go. So then that one gives me a tab. All right, so we talked about parties, property. All right, so now this information right here as it relates to the property. There we go. So on the MLS write-up, that's that information. So this LT stands for lot, BLK stands for block, and then that's the subdivision. So on the contract, you're gonna put lot, block, and then the subdivision information. Put the city of Houston. So we know that information is on there, Houston. And then, so this is the subdivision, and then it's gonna ask for the county, Harris County. So that's why it's good to have that information up while you're filling out the contract. And then also known as, that's just your address and your zip code. So again, MLS write up, you get the address, you got the zip code, boom, you're ready to rock and roll. And I highly encourage all new agents to read this contract. Like that's a lot of your hangups, a lot of your apprehensions when working with a client is going to come from you feeling like you don't know enough of the forms. And the easiest way to deal with that situation is for you to just read the forms. Like if you read the forms and become familiar with what the forms say, then like that, you're going to become way more comfortable from a transactional standpoint. Because I know that there's a lot of, when you first get into this business, most people are very apprehensive about like growing their business because they're afraid they're going to make a mistake or they're going to get in trouble because the real estate schools kind of, they condition you to feel that way. But I just want you to understand, just read the contracts, right? And then as your broker, we're not going to let you get in trouble. All right, so that's where we could do that. And then, so we talked about it being on the MLS write-up, but you can also go to like the county. Well, I wouldn't do that. That's what we used to do. In the past, we used to go to the county, like hcad.org or fbcad.org. We used to do all of that. But again, that's antiquated. That's old school. So we ain't got to do that no more. So now Matrix has it to where if you wanted to just go to public records, you can go to realist tax, which is one that I've become familiar with. And then you could just take that address and you can put it in real list text and it'll pull up that information as well. So say you're looking for a property that's not on the MLS and you want to get their tax information. Like all I did was put the address in there and then it'll pull up the tax write-up that the appraisal district for that county. And I kind of like, the reason I like this one a little bit going to HCAD, because I can have multiple properties. I can have multiple counties right there. So if I do change county, then like I can, instead of searching in one county, I can search like these. And then anytime I put a property in there, it's searching in all of these counties versus if I go to hcad.org, it's only going to give me the Harris County information. So that's some good information as well.
For those new agents, let me tell you, the real list is going to be extremely vital to you, especially on that selling side. I don't know if we're going to get to selling later, but lots of times if you're selling a property and it has not been resold, that information is not going to be in the MLS. So in order to find out square footage, amount of bedrooms and baths, you are going to have to go through real list to access that information. So it's important to learn that side of it.
Hey, absolutely, Sid. Thank you for sharing that with us, buddy. Appreciate that. All right. So yeah. So okay. So now let's jump back. And probably what we'll end up doing, you know, time's sake, we'll probably just kind of be able to go through this contract. And then you guys let me know. Y'all let me know what other forms y'all want me to kind of go through, and we can do a deep dive like we're doing this 1 to 4 family. Like I said, I like to touch it once a quarter. They didn't send a bill. Or get with, ask Brooks if he got a bill. Okay, so that's the property information. And like I said earlier, go through here and read this stuff. Like read what, because right here, it's defining what improvements is under B. It's defining what accessories are. It's defining as far as exclusions. So just, especially when it comes to exclusions, in essence, what you're saying is if something, say for instance, like a chandelier, right? I know you guys kind of learned this in real estate school. If it's attached to the property like a chandelier, then if nothing's been addressed in the contract, then it's assumed that that property, that fixture is going with the property. Well, this is the part of the contract, if that seller wants to take that chandelier, if they want to take that door or them cabinets or that built-in shelf, whatever, this is the area that they will put that they're excluding that from the sale of the property. But it's only if it's attached, if it's a fixture. So if it's not attached, say like appliances, that's not automatically assumed that those are going into the house. So that's something that you got to talk about. You got to negotiate as it relates to your client. But if it's attached to the property and nothing's in this area right here, and then that seller come and take that chandelier, no, they're in breach of contract because they never excluded that. All right. And again, you guys just jump in here, man. This is just kind of like a table talk. If y'all have any questions or you want me to go into more detail, y'all jump in here and say. All right, now sales price. This is where you put in the information about the sales price. Most instances, you are going to have a cash portion and you're going to have a finance portion. So if a person's putting something down, say they're putting 3% down or 5% down or 20% down, this is the section that you would put that information. And then on B, you would let them know what kind of third-party financing is going to be. Is it going to be from just a traditional bank? Or are they going to assume a loan, a portion of the loan? Is it going to be seller financing or where the seller's financing it? So all of that is going to be, you notified now which is it going to be? So is it just regular third party where they're just doing a bank? Or is the owner financing it? They all put in the same section. And then you would type in there what that total amount is for financing. So then you got your down payment portion, you got your financing portion, you add it together, and then that's where you have the sum. So this is where you put the price, right? So this is a very important part of the contract. All right, so now under sales price, it talks about if you want to do any lease backs. I'm sorry. If there's any leases that are that are a part of this purchase, right? So in essence, what it's saying, once it gets under contract, the seller can't create any new leases. So if there's a tenant in the property, once the seller signs this contract, they can't now go back and sign a new lease with that tenant because based on how the contract reads. Hold on one second, guys. All right, so those leases, and then it just asks, are there residential leases, attached fixture leases, natural resource leases? So again, just take time. The way that you get familiar with these contracts to determine if it applies, because there's a lot. Don't think that everything on the contract is going to apply. Like everything's not going to apply. So by reading the contracts, you'll get an understanding of what does apply and what does not apply. And then also always keep in mind that if you actually have to fill out one of these, you have opportunities. You have your mentor, you have myself, so you have other senior agents. You have somebody there that can help you understand what's going on with these forms. All right, so we get to page 2. On the top of each page, you're gonna put the property address. On the bottom of each page, the buyer's gonna initial, the seller's gonna initial, right? So make sure you don't forget your initials on each page because you gotta have initials on there, and then you wanna have the property address at the top of each page. All right, so this is one of the biggest adjustments, biggest changes that they made to the contract as it had to do with earnest money and the termination option. In the old contracts, these were 2 separate sections. One was in the front, earnest money was in the front, termination option was in the back. But now what they've changed is the earnest money and the option fee is all delivered to the title company. In the past, it would be earnest money would go to the title company, option fee would go to the seller, right? That's how we did it in the past. Matter of fact, and I'm curious now, for you all that are kind of in school now, Shantae, Cecilia, Monica, what are they teaching y'all about option fee? Are they still saying that option money goes to the seller, or are they saying it goes to the title company now? Are you muted? You muted, Cecilia.
It's going to the seller, I believe.
Okay, so Shantae, they're still teaching y'all that it goes to the seller?
Yeah, I believe it's going to the seller. Right.
Okay, so they changed that. That got changed in November. So it no longer goes to the seller. The option money goes to the title company. So everything goes to the title company now, the earnest money and the option fee. So even as you read this section of the contract, within 3 days after the effective date, buyer must deliver, this is where you put the title company information. So this person as an escrow agent at whatever address. So this is where you put the title company name, right? So if you're using like one of our friends, White Star Title, so you will put deliver to White Star Title as escrow agent at, and then we will put White Star's address. Then you put right here the amount for earnest money, and then you put the amount for option money. So all of it's going to the title company. So say if you're putting $2,000 earnest money, $500 option money, you put $2,000 here, earnest money, $500 here as option fee. And then the earnest money and option fee are made payable to the escrow agent, which is title company. Now they may be paid separately or combined in a single payment. So what that means is if the earnest money is $2,000, the option fee is $500, I can pay that $2,000 I can pay them in 2 separate checks. They still need to both be made out to White Star, but they'll just be 2 separate checks of $2,000 or $500, or I can just submit them a single check of $2,500. So that's all that means. And then buy should deliver, and then it goes into, because what they do sometimes with this additional earnest money, if we negotiate terms and then inside of our terms, we say, hey, look, for the first 2 weeks or for the first 30 days, I'm putting up $2,000. If I don't close within that first 30 days, and I'm going to put up an additional $1,000, say for every 2 weeks until I close. Well, you can already put those terms in here where by putting that $1,000 and then within say 14 or 15 days of the contract or the effective date of the contract. Okay. And again, we're not going to go line for line, but I just want y'all to read through it. Now, here's another important piece. So now as it relates to termination option, this is where you give your client an opportunity to walk away without no questions asked. They can walk away from the transaction and get their earnest money back. So it's very important that if your client is going to do an option period, that we do this part right. Now, here's the reality. It's so competitive right now in the market that there's a lot of people foregoing their option to terminate. They're buying them without an option period. They're buying them, some of them are still doing inspections, but they're not able to back out of the transaction based on the inspection because they don't have a termination option. Matter of fact, we just closed on the property. Margaret did that. The lady opted not to go with the termination option, and it was a negotiation tactic to be able to get the property. So don't be surprised if you're talking to your mentor or you're talking to myself and we advise you, hey man, have that conversation with your client and see how bad they really want the property if they're willing to forego a termination option. So now it doesn't mean that they're not going to know if there's anything wrong with the property. You can still do your inspection. It's just you don't have that option to walk away, no questions asked, right? And there are some people, there was a time where I'd have been like, oh no, you absolutely always have to have a termination option. No matter what, you got to protect your buyer. But man, these times are different. And it's so very competitive right here for buyers agents and for buyers that I've seen this happen. And I've advised on it as well. All right, so then they had their little timers of the essence piece in there. Title policy, we know that's negotiable. Now, it is custom that the seller pays for it, but not in all situations. Again, this is one of those things where buyers are paying for the title policy just so they can win the deal. So that's why you can choose who's paying for the title commitment or the title insurance policy. Is the seller or the buyer? So we know title insurance covers in essence, what it does is that if I'm a buyer and I'm buying this property, I don't want to be worried about if somebody else has rights to the property after I bought it. I paid 200 grand, I put my 20% down, so I didn't drop my 40 grand. I got this loan in my name, and then I come to find out I don't own the property because the person that sold it to me didn't have the rights to the property, right? They got my money, but they don't have the rights to the property. Now we in a big pickle. So that's what title insurance covers. It covers that from happening. So we go through a title company, their underwriter does their research. And then once they submit a commitment saying, hey, we researched this and we found that the title is free and clear. This, in essence, this person that's selling you this property has the rights to be able to sell it to you. Then now, if anybody comes back laying claim to the property, it's up to the title company and their attorneys to fix the problem. It's their headache. So that's what title insurance is all about. And then so here you will put like I said, we're using White Star Title. Title policy is issued by White Star Title. You put that right there and you pick who's going. Buyer and seller initial, address of the property, put that at the top. Now, this is where we put if we're getting a survey or not. Most lenders are going to require to either get a new survey or submit a survey that the seller already has. So this first box is where you are able to, the seller is able to furnish a old survey or an existing survey, what they call it, of the property. But if that happens, this is something that I did not do. So you got to make sure that you do it if you are representing the seller. If you're going to submit the seller's existing survey, you have to also send that with this T47 affidavit, right? It's a residential real property affidavit promulgated by the Texas Department of Insurance. That is a form that you can get out of these many libraries. So that's another example, Cecilia, where you know, Trek doesn't have that form. So you want to, let's see, we go to tools. Let's see, I know we had forms manager. MLS tools. Yeah, there we go. Where my tools at? All right, so you know you can go here. So and here's a great thing about this. Like if I type in T47, let's see if it pops up. Yeah, boom. So even in HAR's forms manager, you can type in the name. Right. So this is the contract. So the contract gives you the name right here, T47 affidavit. All I did was I put that in the search bar and it pulls up the form. Boom. So if you're going to submit, an existing survey, and you're representing the seller, you're going to submit that to the buyer, then you also have to submit this form along with the existing survey. Okay, that's important. And again, I'm telling y'all this because I used to didn't do that, and it can get you caught up. So now this is important, and it's good that they bolded it. If the seller fails to furnish the existing survey or affidavit, meaning you can submit the existing survey, but you did not submit the affidavit. Within the time prescribed, buyers shall obtain a new survey at seller's expense no later than 3 days prior to closing, right? So this is important because what we used to think was if we say, hey, if we check this box and the seller says, I think I have an existing survey. So we're representing the seller and we say, hey, you know what? We think they have one. So they're going to do, they're going to go find it. If they don't have it, then it'll be a buyer's expense if they don't have it. So that's what we used to do, right? Until we got shocked a couple of times. Well, not a couple of times, really only take one time to get shocked. Like, oh my God. And when you actually read it, what it's saying is that in the event we click on this box, then that seller has to submit a survey or an affidavit. If they do not submit the survey or the affidavit, then it's it's a seller's expense, period. That you don't have a choice in the matter if you don't submit it. Now, if it's submitted, right here, if the existing survey or affidavit is submitted, but it's not acceptable to the title company, then you can choose whose expense is going to be. But if the seller never submits it and you check this box, then it's on the seller all day. All right, so that's important. Now, if you don't want to put your seller in that situation and you just click that the buyer's going to get it, or you can click that the seller's going to get it. That's a way to remedy that as well. All right, let's see. Okay. All right, Monica, I'll get with you. Matter of fact, text me that, and then I can kind of text you all of that stuff, Monica. We'll get you the forms. All right. So now objections. So this is saying that if there are any defects, exceptions, encumbrances, anything associated with the title, commitment, the survey, it gives you a list of things that the buyer may object to. And this is just the area that you kind of put in. Now, you don't necessarily have to fill this area out. Let me tell you why. If you read this section right here, buyer must object the earlier of. So they automatically give you the closing date. So in essence, what they're saying is you just got to object before y'all close. You can't come back after y'all close and then try to object it. So so they already give you the closing date. Now, if you wanted to object prior to the closing, if you wanted to object at a date that was maybe a couple of days or weeks before the closing date, and you just want to stipulate that, maybe you just want to have more time in between the time that you objected and the closing date, then that's when you can jump in there and put a date. But you know, if everybody's good with saying, hey, look, we're going to object prior to closing, you know, at some point before the closing date, then you can leave that blank. All right, and again, just go in here, kind of read up on this stuff so you can see what it means. What does the abstract or title policy mean? You know, membership and property owners association. Oh, you know what? Does this get rid of the? So I'm gonna look to see if there's an HO, if we still got an HOA addendum. Because this used to be an HOA. No, this has always been, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're gonna have to use an HOA addendum for this as well. But this right here is just determines if the property is in an HOA, or the the more proper term is property owners association, POA. It's just another word for homeowners association. The property is in a POA or it is not in a POA. So that's just where you're kind of notifying. And then it says if the property is subject to mandatory membership in a property owners association, seller notifies buyer under Texas Property Code that as a purchaser of property in a residential community. All right, that's it. So yeah, so this just kind of details if it is in a HOA. All right. Now, anytime you're looking at these contracts and you see something in bold or underline, if it's bold and underlined, I think you need to really pay attention to what that part of the contract is saying, right? Notice how there are areas of the contract that are bold. So you definitely want to pay attention to the stuff that's in bold. That means it's important. But this one's bold and underlined. So they want to make sure. So you definitely want to read that. It says you are obligated to pay assessments to the Property Owners Association. The amount of the assessment is subject to change. Your failure to pay the assessment could result in enforcement of the association's lien on and the foreclosure of the property. So yes, homeowners associations can put a lien on your property and they can foreclose on your property. So, you know, right now as an association, we're working to try to dial back some of that power that these HOAs have as it relates to property rights. All right, if a buyer is concerned about these matters, TREC promulgated addendum for property. So here's the addendum that they recommend that we use. Now, we're not gonna be able to go through the addendum today. So usually when you're submitting an offer, there are at least two addendum. Well, I'll take that back. It depends. Most of the time, you're gonna be sending three. You're gonna be sending a wonderful family contract. You're gonna be sending this agreement, this addendum that they're talking about right here, the addendum for property subject to mandatory membership in a property owners association, the third-party financing addendum, you know, because that's if most people are using a loan, so they're going to submit that as well. And if it's built before 1978, then you're going to use the lead-based paint addendum. So that's usually how offers, those are the documents that usually go with an offer. Now, there are other notices that you can submit, like a notice being in the water district, but you don't have to submit all these other documents. There are some agents, man, they'll send you an offer, man, they got all kind of documents connected to it. You don't necessarily have to do all of that. All right, so you're going to initial the bottom. The buyer and the seller initial the bottom, put the property address at the top. All right, so again, these are all definitions. So on page 4, it talks about what tidewater. And remember, I said a lot of this stuff is not going to apply to your situation. Remember, this contract covers the entire state of Texas, not just Houston, not just Missouri City, not just Pearland, the whole state. So it's stuff in this contract that does not apply. That's what you got going on. So this is right here where you can read it up. All right. So this area deals with the seller's disclosure. So that's another form. Usually that's submitted to you by the seller. You want your buyer to be able to put their eyes on the seller's disclosure. And that is the form. That's another one of those forms you're not gonna find on TREC. Same thing with the HOA addendum. You may not find that on TREC, but you can always go to here, right? So if we put seller's disclosure, all right, let's see. Notice. the funny thing about these things, you got to know the exact title. All right, let me see. All right. Sales disclosure notice. Try it. All right. Now, if you ever run into a situation that you can't find it, they're in alphabetical order. Go down to the S's. It's interesting. So maybe the seller's disclosure notice ain't in here. Now I'm in the HAR forms manager. Well, like I said, you always got transit, and that's why it's good to know where the different areas for you to find the forms. Okay, trying to show y'all seller's disclosure. Let me see if I can get it in here. So this one has it. So that's a TAR form, Texas Realtors. Oh no, this is an update to the seller disclosure. That's interesting. I must be calling it something wrong. Sales disclosure. Sorry, guys. I thought I gotta be calling it something wrong. Oh, I'm putting nobody's telling me. No, I'm putting sales disclosure. All right, well, y'all not gonna be able to see it today. But it's a form out there that says seller's disclosure. And that's what this is talking about. So when it says buyer has received the notice, and all it is just a form that the seller fills out notifying the buyer of anything that the seller may know that is wrong with their property. And then the same thing with lead-based paint. So, if the house was built before 1978, if the seller and most sellers don't, but if the seller knows that the house was painted with lead base, then that's where they would disclose it, or they would disclose that they don't know, which is what most sellers do. They just disclose that they don't know. There's opportunity for the buyer to accept the property as is. Now, here's a area where we used to put, back in the old days, we would put per or based on inspection report, or per inspection report. So it's like buyer accepts the property as is, provided seller at seller's expense shall complete the following specific repairs and treatments. And we will put based on the inspection report. Well, they told us that we can't put that there because that is something that is identified prior to the option period. So that's like if you go to a house and you see that the fence is broken and the seller says, hey, you know what, we're gonna fix the fence. So then that's where you will put that in here. And we're accepting the property provided that the seller fixes the fence. So as long, it has to be specific, right? Specific repairs is where you will put that. All right, so then this kind of defines just more definitions, lender required repairs, completion, environmental manners. All right, let's see. HOA form states they do not sell to minority. Oh, they can't say that no more, Shantae.
I
The
know, but I know it's still in some of the contracts, so I didn't know, what do you tell a buyer, when the seller presents that to them?
well, it can't be enforced.
Okay,
It's a violation of the Civil Rights Act of 1965.
right, okay,
So
okay,
so yeah, you're still gonna find some of that stuff in there, but it's not enforceable. It's it's
okay,
unenforceable. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
So her question was, what do you do if you have an HOA form that states they do not sell to minority? What do you tell your buyer? And what I'm telling her is that because they are out there, that they're no longer enforceable. So it doesn't even matter that it's in there. And the reason, so then you would ask, like, well, why is it still in there? Like, why is it still in the covenants? Because a lot of with the HOA covenants, you have to get a certain percentage of the residents to approve additions or deletions of the covenants. So, once that part of the covenant was made illegal federally through by law, then if they're officially gonna take it out of the covenants, they would have to kind of go through the process of getting a certain amount of residents to agree for it to be removed. And most HOAs just opted not to be bothered with any of that. So that's why you'll still see those kind of terms, showcasing segregation and discrimination and that kind of stuff. You still see those in the deed restrictions of certain neighborhoods. Okay, so residential service contract. So that's another word for home warranty. Matter of fact, we did our home warranty training last week, I think. We talked about home warranties. So this is what they're called inside of the contract. So in there are instances where the seller will reimburse monies to the buyer for them purchasing a home warranty. So now notice the buyer purchases, the way this reads, buyer may purchase a residential service contract from a residential service company. That company has to be licensed by TREC. If the buyer purchases a residential service contract, the seller shall reimburse buyer at closing for the cost of the residential service contract in an amount not exceeding, and then we come up with the money. Now, I don't know why they haven't changed this, because all of these transactions that they're talking about happen at closing. So it's not as if the buyer goes prior to the closing time and purchases that home warranty. Like the home warranty is paid for through the title company distributions after everything's closed anyway. So, but they still read it as if the buyer's paying for it first and then the seller's reimbursing them at closing, but it all happens at the same time regardless. So it's not as if your buyer's coming out of pocket. All right, so now again, when we see something in bold, we want to read it. The purchase of a residential service contract is optional. Similar coverage may be purchased from various companies authorized to do business in Texas. So, all right, so this is where you got to let people know if you are a realtor and you're buying a property, and this is what defines disclosure, right? Because there are a lot of people out there that say, oh, you got to disclose if this, you got to disclose if that, and that's not true. The only time you have to disclose is defined in this paragraph right here. So it just says, Texas law requires a real estate broker, a sales agent, who is a party to a transaction or acting on behalf of a spouse, parent, child, business entity in which the broker or sales agent owns more than 10%, or a trust for which the broker or sales agent acts as a trustee, or of which the broker or sales agent or the broker or sales agent's spouse, parent, or child is a beneficiary, to notify the other party in writing before entering into contract of sale. So now, some people be like, oh, if you're a sister, if that's your sister, you got to disclose. That ain't what that said. Or if that's your cousin, you got to disclose. That's not what that said. That said spouse, parent, or child. That's when you have to disclose. And then it says, who is a party or acting on behalf. Yeah. So it's only those spouse, parent, or child that you have to disclose. Somebody got a question? Who coming on here making all that noise? Like Shante? No, that ain't Shante. That gonna make me mute you. All right. All right. So closing. All right. So here's the closing time. You want to now before you put a date here, you definitely want to have a conversation with the lender, and you want to ask the lender, hey man, you know how long it's gonna take for you to close. If the lender say, oh, I can get the loan done in 25 days, then what my habit was, I would always add 5 to 10 days to whatever the lender told me. And I would say, hey, man, give me your absolute, and I would tell them to be real conservative in their dates and say, hey, look, you know, don't give me if everything works out and flows, you know, I can get it done in 20 days now. Because the reality is that no real estate transaction ever works out and flows like that. So I always try to give, you know, back when I was doing deals and stuff like that, 30, 35, 40 days is kind of what I would put on there. But there are lenders that are, you know, getting deals closed in 25, 30 days. So, but then there are some, especially if you're going to use down payment, you probably want to put 60, 75. And I get it, man. Agents are skeptical on putting that amount of time frame because they think that that's going to scare the seller. But I would rather deal with it up front, deal with the apprehensions and the concerns up front than trying to deal with it once you've gotten down the line and you're now about to miss this close date. So now your client's earnest money is at risk. So you really don't want to be having that conversation at that time, right? So this is where we put the closing date. All right, we initial the bottom, put the top of the address. All right, so this just speaks about when the buyer takes possession. Again, read the stuff in bold. They tell you be very apprehensive about what you put in this special provisions. Like it says, only factual statements and business details. What I've noticed is every time TREC updates this document, they make the special provisions section smaller and smaller and smaller. And that's just them telling us that they want us to not have to write. So technically, if there's another addendum or something that addresses what you're trying to do, then TREC doesn't want you writing it in here. Okay. See, it even says it right here. TREC rules prohibit license holders from adding factual statements or business details for which a contract addendum, lease, or other form has been promulgated by TREC for mandatory use. So that's on there as well. Settlement and other expenses. So when sellers contribute, this is the section of the contract that you're going to put that information. Now, again, in this market, you're not really seeing a lot of that because it's so competitive. Sellers don't have to contribute to buyers' closing costs, right? They ain't got to, you know, put up $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 to help the buyer pay their loan. You know, they like, hey, if you got it, get it. If you ain't got it, I'm gonna move on to the next person who ain't asking for this stuff. But if you do get lucky enough to get the seller to agree, then this is where you would type in how much the seller is going to pay, not to exceed, and then it tells you what is going to be applied. It's going to be applied in the follower of buyer's expenses. Now the buyer is prohibited from paying FHA, VA, Texas Veterans Land Board, or other governmental loan programs, and then to other buyer's expenses allowed by the lender. All right, prorations, that's where we deal with the taxes, right? So if you're buying in the middle of the year, like property taxes are paid at the end of the year. So when I paid for my house, when I paid in January 2021, I was actually paying my property taxes for the year 2020. So now what that means is that if I sell my house in July, well, that new buyer, when they get, you know, when they're going to get a bill for the entirety of 2021, but they've only owned the house, say from July to December. So what we do is that at the closing table, I'm going to give, as a seller, I'm going to give that buyer a credit of my portion of the property taxes for when I've owned the house. I'm going to credit that to the buyer at the closing table. So now he can go, and when he gets that bill or that invoice, he can pay those property taxes. So that's how that works. All right, casualty loss. This is just pretty much, so casualty loss, again, that's the definition. Default, this is a very important section because this is how you know if the buyer is in default of the contract. And when that happens, that earnest money is at risk. So as a license holder, you definitely want to understand how you can cost your clients some money. And guess what? We all done it. So don't get to tripping, because I know you like, oh, I don't want, I mean, that's the worst that my client would have to lose some money off of a mistake that I made. It's gonna happen, period. It's nothing you can do about it. You are going to make that mistake. We all do. We all are going to put our clients in a situation where it may cost them some money. And, you know, some of them understand and some of them don't understand. It's just a part of the business. But I don't want you losing no sleep because you're trying to put up all these parameters and these boundaries to avoid that from happening. Like, it's just too many moving variables, too many pieces, too many opportunities for oversights to take place for it not to happen at least one time in your career in real estate. But guess what? If it happens, it's not the end of the world, right? Don't be trying to turn in your license because it's like, oh my God, I'm a horrible realtor. I need to go do something else. Like, don't do that. It's just, it happens. It's happened to all of us. All right. Now again, your brokers, we're here for you. Like, so we do have those layers of support, right? If you want a second set of eyes, you want some recommendations, or you want somebody's thoughts as it relates to it, we're here, through our trainings, through the mentor program, through the coaching, through the group meet, through the private Facebook group. Like, you're in the ecosystem, so tap into it. You ain't got to be out here guessing. It's just too many people that you have access to that can give you clarity on things. It talks about attorney fees. Escrow is another word for title. So in the contract, they call them the escrow agent. In essence, they're talking about the title company. So I've been using White Star Title as our person. So this was the stuff that's defining what White Star Title can and cannot do, is defining the expenses that White Star Title can have and demand damages. All of this is as it relates to the title company. Okay. Representations, it just talks about who represents who, disclosures, as it relates to the title commitment, so all of that is in here. Talks about federal tax. So again, remember I said earlier, a lot of stuff's not going to apply. So like, this is if you're selling, if a person is selling a property and they're considered a foreign person, meaning they're not a citizen, they bought property down here, now they're selling it. So, and then they put it as defined by the IRS. That's this form that you're going to be dealing with. All right, so now under notices, understand that all notices from one party to the other must be in writing and are effective when mailed to, hand delivered at, or transmitted by fax or email, right? Electronic transmission or email as follows. So then this is where you put the address, not the name, because a lot of people put the name. You put the mailing address of the buyer, you put the mailing address of the seller, phone number, email, fax, right? And this is also where the title company pulls the contact information for your client. So you definitely want to fill this part out. I know I've seen a lot of contracts and these sections aren't filled out. They just skip these sections. No, you want to fill this section out, make it easier for your title company so you're not slowing down the process because people try to track down people's contact information. You won't do that. All right, so here where you would check all the documents and addendums that you've been using that are connected to this property. All right, so this is why I couldn't find the seller's disclosure. So it's called the addendum for seller's disclosure of information on lead-based paint. No, that's not right. Let's see, where's the seller's disclosure? I thought that was, let's see. That old seller's disclosure, man. It is not coming up. Terry, I'm sorry, T. I'm gonna do better.
Hello.
So, yeah, man, I don't know. I'm just having I can't find the seller's disclosure, y'all. I'm gonna have to show that to y'all later. So they must. I could have swore it used to be attached to the Wonderful Family contract as one of the addendums. All right, so this contract contains the entire agreement of the parties and cannot be changed. Addendum which are part of this contract, and then you check which ones are a part of it. Now here's one that I really do want to point out, and it's this addendum concerning right to terminate due to lender's appraisal. Now, if you're using a FHA, if your buyer is using an FHA loan or a VA loan or a USDA loan, any governmental backed loan, then this third party financing addendum, you good to go, right? That's all you need, because that's going to cover if the house doesn't appraise. If the house doesn't appraise, then the buyer would have the right to terminate the contract and get their earnest money back. So all of that's covered, any governmental backed loan, FHA, VA, USDA, all of those. Now, if you have a conventional loan, the third party financing addendum is not enough because it does not protect your buyer from being able to terminate if the house doesn't appraise. And what that means is if you only submit the third party financing addendum and you send the appraiser out there and the price comes back low, say they're asking 200,000 and it comes back 185,000, well, if all you have is the third party financing addendum, like if you have an FHA VA and you had a third party financing addendum, then there's a clause in there that says that buyer has the right to terminate because it didn't appraise at the $200,000 amount. But if you're a conventional loan, that clause doesn't cover conventional loans. So that means that that buyer would be on the hook for buying that house at 200,000 or forfeiting their earnest money. They don't get their earnest money back. So that's why you got to have this addendum as well, this addendum concerning right to terminate due to lender's appraisal, because that covers conventional loans in the event that the house doesn't appraise. So I want to point that one out. All right, if you're not using an attorney, don't put no attorney's information on here, because if you put attorney's information on here, then somebody got to pay him. So don't just be filling these forms out. Just because you talk to your cousin and he an attorney, don't be putting his information on here. He ain't representing nobody. Okay. All right. And then we got the execution date. And the last page. All right, so the second to last page. All right, so this page right here, that's where you put the execution date. So, and then remember, the execution date is added by the person that is done. So what it looks like sometime is you'll submit the initial offer with just the buyer's signature on it and the buyer's initials. The seller may initial it and sign it, but that seller's representative may scratch through some items, make some adjustments, and that seller will put their initials there. So then that buyer gets it back. So then that buyer needs to initial next to those scratch offs or whatever. So the last person that initials, that representative is the one that fills in this execution date, because that's when it actually starts, right? And then you have the signatures. Now, broker information. When I was submitting offers, I would always fill this in for the listing agent, kind of make it easy for them. So again, if you on the MLS write-up, most of that information you can see, you can find out. Like for this person, you can see the listing agent, their name, their phone number. The only thing that you don't have is their license number, but you can go through Trek and find that. So it makes it real easy to kind of fill that out. If you're representing a buyer only as buyer's agent, then you will put your information over here. If you're representing a seller only as seller's agent, you will put the information here. You will never be representing the seller and the buyer, right? So now here's some things that get people tripped up. They feel like if a buyer does not have an agent, that means that the listing agent is representing that buyer. That's not what that means. It means that that buyer does not have an agent. If that listing agent has got the seller to agree to pay them a 6% commission, then that buyer, and if the buyer agent was a part of the transaction, and that listing agent would take 3%, that buyer's agent would get the other 3%. But if the buyers do not have representation, then the listing agent gets the whole 6%. So it's not that the listing agent is now representing the buyer because they don't have representation. It's just, they just don't have representation. But that listing agent can facilitate the transaction without that buyer having representation, as long as that listing agent has disclosed to that buyer who they represent, which will be the seller, period. You do that, you covered. And as long as you don't blatantly tell the buyer that they cannot have representation or they don't need to have representation, like as long as you're not doing that, don't do none of that. Give them the option. Like, hey, look, you know, if you feel more comfortable, you need to get your agent. But if they just like, nah, I'm good, I'm just gonna go, we just gonna do you. All right, cool. You ain't got to convince nobody to use no agent. But you never gonna be a intermediary. So I'm telling you that right now. So don't even worry about that. They need to go ahead and take that box off the contract. I don't know why they still have it on there. All right, and then this is where you determine this. So as a buyer's agent, you got to make sure you're paying attention. You better have 3% down here, because if you ain't got if there's nothing on this contract, then you are not covered as far as getting paid. So if the most important page of a contract, if you're a buyer's agent, the most important page for you is at the bottom of page 10. Make sure you got 3% on there that you got money coming to you. Even if your name is on this contract, all your information is filled out. If there is no number right here, if this is blank, 0, I mean, you ain't getting paid. We don't want that. All right, and then this last page, this is just a receipt page. So sometimes, you know, when the title company gets things, they get the contract, they'll fill this page out and send it back to you. So it's just that there's this receipt for contract, receipt for earnest money, receipt for option fee, and then additional earnest money receipts on there as well. That's the last page. All right, we got a couple of questions. Let's see what questions we have. And then I'll take some questions from some other questions. And then if not, we'll be done. All right, so Shantae asks, have you ever had to credit a buyer part of your commission? If so, where do you apply on the contract? Not that I want to do that. No, you do not want to do that, Shantae. To answer your question, yes, I have credited a part of my commission to buyers, to sellers, to other agents, to, you know, it happens. It's a part of doing business in some instances. Now, it's not addressed in the contract, because keep in mind, the contract is between the buyer and the seller. It's not between you and the buyer or you and the seller. So the contract is just between the buyer and the seller. So that wouldn't be addressed there. That would be addressed either in the listing agreement. It may be addressed there. If you're gonna credit some money back to the seller, it could be addressed on the buyer's agreement. If you're gonna credit money back to the buyer, or what most of us do is that it's kind of like a shake. We shake on it, and then at the closing table, we submit a closing disclosure. Like me being a broker, like I go to the closing table and just say it, right? But as an agent, you got to get your broker's approval. And then once you get your broker's approval, then we submit that to the title company, and the title company will credit it on the closing statement. Some title companies do want a letter saying that the broker, from the broker, signed by the broker, that they're agreeing or that they're approving it, right? But that's where that will be handled. It wouldn't be handled in the contract. All right, and then you have another question. Great question, Shantae. All right, if a buyer paid cash and they want the house appraised for the same amount he paid or higher, what do you tell the buyer? Well, the buyer can't tell the appraiser what value he wants the house appraised at. So the appraisal, all you do is you hire the appraisal. And you know what we recommend is that if the value amount is a concern for a cash buyer, then we get the appraisal done before they buy it. And then at that point you'll know. But the buyer can't dictate to the appraiser, hey, this is what I want the value to be. The appraiser goes out there, they do their method, they pull their comparables, and then they submit their opinion of value. Because keep in mind that appraiser's on the hook for whatever that number is. So if they ain't doing right, or if they ain't taking it into consideration. So most appraisals are going to be conservative. You're going to run into many situations, especially like the situation we're in right now, where it's a very active market. Housing prices are escalating very rapidly, but the appraisals they haven't caught up yet. So things are not appraising when you see a lot of houses that are not appraising, but it's not because that house is not worth that. It's just because the appraisers haven't caught up, or the data hasn't caught up yet to justify that these housing prices have increased the way that they have. So that's another situation. All right. What other questions? Anybody else have any other questions about the 1 to 4 family? You can either unmute yourself or you can put it in the chat. Are there any other forms y'all want me to kind of go through later? Not today, but like y'all want like more of a deep dive or a deeper understanding as it relates to the forms that really just kind of stand out to you? Anybody? How do y'all feel about this? Like y'all feel like this was valuable?
Yes, it was. I got a lot of good information, more information than I did in school, so that was good. We broke it down for us, so thank you.
Broke it down. Yes, absolutely, absolutely. All right, well.
I enjoyed it too. Thank you.
Oh, you enjoyed it too, Shantae?
Yeah, that's why I had asked you that question, because it was on the exam. And that was the question about somebody paid cash and they wanted the house appraised for that value. And it was either you have your broker explain to them the fair, I guess, the market value for the house, or either you just terminate the agreement or what. But I'm pretty sure that wasn't it. So that's
right.
I was just curious as far as what that answer was.
Oh, yeah, you gotta be careful with that test, man. They be trying to trick you up.
Yes, I'm sorry.
You know how they do, man. They be trying to trip you up. Okay, well, good.
I found it was very informative.
Oh,
Very
good.
informative. The part for me personally that stuck out was the fact that HOA still haven't taken out the Negro clause, but just because they don't want to be bothered or associated. But that's just me personally. But anyway, it was a very informative segment, and it was seriously, it was a very informative segment, because in school they do teach us different things, especially when it comes to the contracts. They test us on the contracts. There's well, you know that, so I don't need to repeat that. But anyway, very informative. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Jamie. Thank you for the feedback. All right, well, family, if y'all don't have anything else, then we'll go ahead and adjourn this training, and you guys be on the lookout for what we got going on next week. And like I said, I'm gonna do one of these kind of trainings at least once a quarter, just so we can stay up to speed on some of the documents and the forms and things that we're using. All right, if y'all need anything, y'all know how to find me. I have a good.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.